look like winning or losing to you?
Well, first of all, I don't know what intelligence assessments you're referring to. We wouldn't discuss intelligence assessments if they were real.
These have been publicly reported.
Well, if they're publicly reported, someone committed a crime, and by the way, is also lying. And this happens all the time. People manipulate intelligence and analysis for purposes of furthering a narrative. On your point of...
If the war is over, then who won? That single question stopped Secretary Marco Rubio in his tracks. Representative Sara Jacobs challenged the administration's claims of victory, pointing to continued fighting, rising costs, and thousands of American troops still deployed. What followed was one of the hearing's sharpest exchanges over whether the White House is telling Americans the truth about the conflict with Iran.
Thank you. I yield back.
Without objection. Representative Jacobs is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, good to see you. I'd like to talk about the war in Iran. Yesterday, in your Senate testimony, you told Senator Booker that the war in Iran is over. This is news to me. It's also news to my 2,500 constituents, Marines, San Diego Marines in the Middle East off the coast of Iran, the other of my constituents who are deployed there, and the thousands more of my constituents who have 48-hour deployment notices whose families are still very concerned. But okay, I will take you at your word. If the war is over, I have a simple question. Who won?
First of all, Epic Fury is over, which is what you would consider the war. That operation is
So you agree it's a war, then?
No, those are hostilities. They called it a war. Okay. I'm just responding to the Senator Booker's
Mr. Secretary,
question.
you can change the name of the operation. It doesn't change the fact that the strait is still closed and my service members and all of our service members are still in harm's way. The war is not over. But I'm agreeing with you. Okay, fine. We're taking you at your word. The war is over. Who won?
Well, first of all, you're not taking me at my word. It's a fact. We're no longer conducting sustained strikes inside of Iran to degrade their military because Epic Fury is over. The second point is, on the question of who won, I can tell you this. We defined victory as destroying their defense industrial base, significantly reducing the number of missile launchers that they possess, significantly reducing their stockpile of drones. And we achieved all of those, in addition to destroying what they had left of an air force and wiping out their entire conventional navy. Those are all gone. So I consider that victory, and we did too, and that was the purpose of Epic Fury.
Okay, well, good. Based on the metrics that you just said, okay, there's actually, our intelligence community has said that Iran is reconstituting its military industrial base faster than we had predicted, and analysts assess it still holds roughly 70% of its missile stockpile and 70% of its mobile launchers. The Strait of Hormuz was open before the war. It is now closed. We have lost 14 brave American service members, over 400 are injured, and the Iranian regime remains largely intact, but now with a more hardline leader who has more incentive to try and get a nuclear weapon. So I guess I have to ask you again, Mr. Secretary, does this actually look like winning or losing to you?
Well, first of all, I don't know what intelligence assessments you're referring to. We wouldn't discuss intelligence assessments if they were real.
These have been publicly reported.
Well, if they're publicly reported, someone committed a crime, and by the way, is also lying. And this happens all the time. People manipulate intelligence and analysis for purposes of furthering a narrative. On your point about the regime is actually deeply fractured, which is why it takes 7 to 10 days to get an answer from them for anything. Meanwhile, they
fractured, but still intact.
Well, intact in the sense they can't even reach agreements that they can get back to us. So I don't know how intact that is. What they have is people that are afraid to go into the streets. Their repressive operations have held people back, in addition to the fact they've cut off the internet. But this is a country right now, in this regime, that is facing hyperinflation, a completely devalued currency, hundreds of billions of dollars in damage to their military infrastructure. And frankly, all of the pre-existing problems that Iran had in their economy, which is why people were protesting, are worse, not better.
Sure,
and they have to deal with that too.
Mr. Secretary, so you're saying we're winning because the Iranian economy has inflation, it's cost them millions of dollars a day in lost revenue, and because it's going to cost them billions of dollars to rebuild. Well, we are having inflation. It's already cost us an estimated $100 billion. Gas prices are up with no end in sight. The average family is paying an extra $450 on gas and could pay an extra $2,000 by the end of the year. The American people are not stupid, Mr. Secretary. We all know that this war is not over. Just last night, the U.S. and Iran exchanged fire again, this time over Karg Island. We still have not reached a deal, despite the president's promise that a deal is right around the corner. The president even said today the blockade could last until Labor Day. It's now day 97 of the war that the president said he wanted to end quickly. So I have one last question for you. Mr. Secretary, who won the 2020 presidential election?
I'm not here to answer a question. We're talking about 2020. This is a foreign affairs committee.
Okay, great. You
Opine on
can't answer the
political
question,
No, I
even
don't
though we
answer
all
no,
know that
I don't
President
answer
Biden
the
won.
question because as Secretary of State, I do not participate in domestic
This is
political
not about
issues.
domestic political issues.
certainly
This is
is.
about our democracy.
You're asking me to opine, just like I don't do campaign
It
rallies.
seems like
I don't
you-
do because as
it's-
Secretary of State, we're not supposed to. That's been the long tradition of the department, and you should know that if you've been on this committee for any period of time. And
Mr.
you're-
Secretary, it seems like you have an
Questions.
issue admitting facts. You can't say that the president lost the 2020 election, just like you won't admit President Trump is losing this reckless war of choice, and just like you couldn't admit that the shoes the president bought you were too big. You clearly don't know what winning means, and not because the facts are unclear to you, it's because telling the truth would cost you your job, and the American people are entitled to a Secretary of State who tells them the truth even when the president doesn't want to hear it, and my constituents, our service members, deserve better. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I don't know what shoes she's talking about. What is she talking about?
One of the most striking moments of this hearing came when Representative Sara Jacobs challenged Secretary of State Marco Rubio over the administration's repeated claim that the war with Iran was effectively over. Rather than beginning with a long speech, Jacobs asked a question that cut straight to the heart of the debate: if the war is over, who won? Rubio responded by arguing that the U.S. military operation, known as Operation Epic Fury, had achieved its objectives. According to him, American forces severely damaged Iran's military infrastructure, reduced its missile capabilities, destroyed much of its conventional navy, and crippled key parts of its defense industry. From his perspective, those military achievements amounted to victory, even if broader regional tensions continued. Jacobs, however, challenged that conclusion. She argued that many of the conditions Americans associate with the end of a war simply were not present. She pointed to continued deployments of U.S. service members, reports that Iran was rebuilding military capabilities, the ongoing closure of the Strait of Hormuz, rising energy prices, and renewed exchanges of fire between the United States and Iran. In her view, those developments suggested the conflict remained active despite the administration's public messaging. The exchange quickly became a debate over competing definitions of success. Rubio emphasized battlefield accomplishments and the damage inflicted on Iran's military capacity. He also argued that Iran's economy was under severe pressure, describing the regime as internally fractured and struggling with inflation, currency collapse, and growing domestic instability. Jacobs countered that Americans judge success differently. She argued that if U.S. troops remain in danger, military exchanges continue, and American families are facing higher fuel costs, then claims of victory deserve closer scrutiny. She also questioned whether the administration's optimistic assessments matched publicly reported intelligence and the realities facing deployed service members. Near the end of her questioning, Jacobs shifted to another topic that has become politically charged in Washington. She asked Rubio who won the 2020 presidential election. Rubio declined to answer, explaining that as Secretary of State he avoids commenting on domestic political matters while serving in that role. Jacobs interpreted his refusal as another example of what she described as an unwillingness to acknowledge uncomfortable facts. The hearing ultimately highlighted two very different narratives. Administration officials defended the operation by pointing to military objectives they say were achieved. Critics argued that ongoing regional instability, continued military risks, and economic consequences raise serious questions about whether the conflict can truly be considered over. Regardless of where viewers stand politically, the exchange underscored one of the central questions surrounding U.S. foreign policy. How should victory be measured? Is success determined by military objectives alone, or by whether the conflict has actually ended and stability has been restored? That question remains at the center of the debate.